The alarm was raised after Mrs. Quinn failed to return home after locking up the family shop. The people of Milltown have been shocked by Mrs. Quinn's disappearance. This morning they joined with Gardaí and the Defence Forces in a search of the area. That search is continuing.
I want Mum to be remembered for the person she was, not how she died.
I never thought that I would be covering a murder in the village where I grew up, where I lived, and where I would know the victim, and where I would ultimately, as it turned out, know the perpetrator.
Joyce choffer for siog tusen sail show. Agus by a clown bonagas bar gach einrod the Joyce.
I spoke to people from the village, and not one of them could say to me that they believed this was somebody local, that there's no way anybody in this village would commit a crime like that.
Mum to be remembered for the person she was, not how she died, and he took that away as well.
In three laws fihid the vi Anner, Lady of Noka Shea, vi unair and tupper Joyce Quinn, ag dona and tupper fe mar bachnach to a shach the chlog. An made a hit a kamach in a yegshin, that roke she sail, fobble valin willen, agus chlowny cheen godo. Galuas na naichadi, Hannig ordu as quinche chirine agus reigen a bhí díre vná. Ní thura meid pobl bhailen willen, baile beg imel an choraigh, go mbeadh siad féin sáite I gceann línte dá le héad.
Bhí rud a cén ar siúil ní déag nócha sé. You know, there was just such a big increase in the number of femicides, dreadful crimes committed against women. Many of them by people they knew. As a reporter, these are the stories that really break your heart. You know, the names, the photographs, they stay with us.
The community here in Milltown is a very vibrant, close-knit community, and always has been a very vibrant community. It was a very quiet village, and there were some developments here in the 1970s and the 1980s. Two small housing schemes in the late 70s, and the new school then was opened in 1981. The village hasn't changed much since I would have been a child, but it would have been a quiet village and still would be a quiet village.
In Naidiagnogus a Haim, Channig Joyce Quinn and Shopper, agus Cream Dierich in Sheach could hain than Fobble, the Garger when a Pavacht Savannah Belkshahi.
She wanted to help people. She wanted to involve herself with the community. She wanted to become a part of the community. Yes, it provided an outlet for your groceries, but it was also somewhere that you could go in and you could talk and you could meet other people. And I think that it was a sort of a social hub in the village almost.
Joyce would go the extra mile. You know, she was genuinely interested in people. So when Joyce would say, "How are you?" she was listening. She was there to listen. And yeah, we developed, you know, a strong bond, just, you know, even going in and out of the shop.
Barg no mar agus cheannig sé siúpa a borna uve agus sin éon áit chuir is aithne Joyce dosach. Nuair a bhíos scoil an altaí, bheadh gá dása gint sa bhliain, agus don chéad dása bhí Curragh ar a bhéin partnéir. Agus dúirs leis na cén fánach tucanú cuireadh de Joyce Quinn. Ihe an dása nuair a tháinig Joyce isteach sa bíalan agus nar acasaí léim ba chrí amocht, mar an óig bhean áling is sa dán na ceapas. Go tapig in dhéag sin, bhí ag nágar a doras chun agus cuireadh thuirte tacht go ceolfar a gampan choirigh. Bhí sí lom a gcóir an Daradaus.
Ganach fihe blian slánathe chur ré ceiliúr an fósta Joyce.
Post me Shra Tomáis, the liberties am le lia. Le Mahar Joyce, Joyce me féin, Mahar agus Trahar Joyce. Bhí ahar Joyce an asna Maria ge couple blianta revision Syria. Bhí ahar san aran, agus bhí sé dúlgas leis na dáisinénta san bhainir agus lábhagé. Farig Saidúros Arm Syria.
Bhí ré héin dúlgas th lear lena náisiún éantaithe.
We lived in Israel when I was younger. We went to Lebanon. As we were older, I was a teenager. We were in Tiberias first, which was lovely, and then we moved to Bethlehem. The first night we arrived in Bethlehem, there was gunfire and it was cold and wet. It was lashing out of the heavens. There were bombs going off. There were helicopters overhead, and Mum got quite upset. And she said, I thought we were going to be safe." And she was obviously distressed because Grandad was killed on the Golan Heights, serving in the UN, and Ray was obviously doing the same job again. And I think the idea that this could all happen once again to her was just really distressing her. She was great. Like, we moved from Tiberias to Bethlehem, and Mum had everything packed. Everything was organised, everything was labelled, there was no major upheaval. And then we went from there over to Damascus, and that was really lovely. There was a great Irish contingent there. It was like another family. They were really, really good.
Téma Gavlin, Hanam Rash Gairden, agus Lenan Sailor Ride.
It was all go in the house. Like, my younger siblings were always referred to as the kids, and I still called them the kids. And Mum was the centre of everything. She was just, everything was about the family. She kept everybody together. She was brilliant with her siblings and just fantastic with us.
Treis dóibh conaí th lear leis an aram ar fa chábhlíon, dil an chlán Kildare.
We had Spanish tutors during the summer, and then during the year there were Spanish students. Like, she always did something, even when we didn't have the students with us. She'd literally be outside helping the neighbours, pick the potatoes. She was just a very hard worker.
Agus is toch has to go could of an Tyler. Agus is na sprach homa. Agus nor a honig shopper Marga William Wooden lees an bank mar. If she's visie on the is toch betrivling gele nor nor a colleague.
There were an awful lot of nice people out there, and an awful lot of good people. Mum worked very, very long hours, and then obviously I wasn't there as much when I was working in Dublin and when I was in college during the week. I'd be out at the weekends, but Mum did most of it, all on her own. And like that, she'd peel the potatoes, out the back room and have them ready so that when she came home, pick me up on the train, or Ray'd pick me up from the train, it was sort of ready, throw them on, get everything done, and there was no hanging around. But she always had a smile for everyone, and she was a bit like a counsellor as well at the same time. She was always lending an ear to everyone. But no matter what, she'd never say anything bad about anyone. She'd find the good in them, regardless, given that she ended up giving the lift and that sort of thing. It just is the way it went.
We should decker the Joyce Dol Harris for Dorcha Girat Tatar Mohor Agus Feckin to Corson, Rudy and turn to sheep. Agus to start O'Reilly Canaltus Joyce chun a fódach.
Joyce Quinn an siopa mar bachnach a seachta chlog ihe an figure trio anar 1996. Bogin an láchi Joyce mar a ból de winter an bhaile agus stop siar an slí a bhaile chun siab óirt dar óg.
Ar maidin sin ar bhúscail siad dúir Joyce lam siad tá mé anna tréachta cá mé dúach go luú an ocht. Ach níor ceapas riomh go colón a bhlachas a bheith cé. Chus go mná lia, chu si gus na lenaí go dtí an siopa, síos tréis de cólágan de an drain, agus bag ná lá é. Timpeall Curragh Plains a thrán tháinig sí bhaile le David agus dag sí Lisa sa siopa. Agus chuir sí fiol san aon agus sucric sí an lacamba, agus chuir sí reisclí an siopa. Timpeall sé log bhuilas leis an siopa agus léim Lisa isteach sa cháir agus fannig Joyce amach agus og sí nach dáin dom agus dúirt mé sa cíimiidal agus dimig mé lum. Go dtí stá sin na drain chun Nicóla a bhailiú. Tfies déanamh rud éigen I gobar mo cheanra. Agus ní bhreas an tá mé gemacht. Le mé an rúdá víris 8 log. Agus sús amach go dtíon chiisten, agus bhín an trúir le ní an. Dúras le cabhal do bhain. Agus sé ní tháinig sí bhaile. Tá sé sin áit. Is tá ráis, raim mé amach go dtí bhaine bhfuil beidir go bheith tábhal am a chár nó rud éigen mar sin.
It's a bad road, and Ray had driven past me on numerous occasions, not seen me, so I decided, right, it's the same thing again. He's after driving past Mum, and that's why I said to Davy, will you go? You know she's a flash. She's at the side of the road, and Ray's after managing to miss her. That was it. You know, I didn't think any more of it.
Ní raibh siad son de go ná gan amsan. Chuir is léchar an fón, agus ní le bhéon fraccan. Is a queen of beidir bhfuil rud éigen tína chéile lena chlána I mí leid lia, agus léigh mé idir hard ar a bhhair, so níor faice tarlú, agus an sin bhíos gón go raibh rud anna bhí cheart a fad. Agus chus seach I stáisiún na gáda I Kildare. Bhínig mé dó go raibh bhean in asnamh, agus seo mé cinnta mar bheith sí sa bhaile, de gnáir, fétrééis seach na lehuirtrééis seach. Sinir sé chun cehrúchan an é. Beidir go bhúid le cara go leige me sé chun deocháil ní ghéan nach Joyce run mar sin. Dí an bhí sé ach na ghéanna Joyce ach dá sí dom tógbógaid ach chus bhaile. Bhaile mé David lom as chuúmar amach a rís an bóthir seo. Cúmar isteach sa siopa ach bhí gachród de an á. Osnig David ag cuardach sa teampall a bhí in aice an siopa. Bhí anna trógam ar an lena bocht a lór go bháthairt an measna lechan na tóma. Dúirt mé leis go raibh sé simí ceart mar bhí mar a lór an cár agus tá bhaimid an cár go bhaimid Joyce. Dúras leis go déanamid cuardach timp na scoile, go bthordá don slí amháin agus ba mis an slí eile agus go bhuaimid le chéile sa chlós. Chulas scréach ó fás agus dúir sé, it's Mom's car. Rés chuig, déachsa seach sa chár, ní ra faiceáin, bhí David trína chéile ar fad agus ní éiting aon cíle bhaintas.
I feel so guilty for asking him to go look for Mum.
I was driving back into the village and I looked up at the cross outside Joyce's shop and I saw the blue lights of the Garda car. I saw a small few people, maybe about 6 or 8 people standing around. So I was a local reporter at the time, working on local radio, and I stopped. One of those standing around told me that Joyce was missing. She'd locked up the shop as normal, but hadn't made it home.
When Joyce Quinn's car was found at the rear of Milltown School, we immediately set up a search party from around here, locals and the Gardaí as well, because we were extremely concerned for her safety.
Curragh le a cardí agus ortíd Milltown agus Clown Joyce an the Rob Lightly agus contain me agus áitin na machine. Agus we were a cordach timple na háite a fad an ihe.
I awoke the following morning to hear the sound of a helicopter.
The alarm was raised after Mrs. Quinn failed to return home after locking up the family shop. The people of Milltown have been shocked by Mrs. Quinn's disappearance. This morning they joined with Gardaí and the Defence Force in a search of the area. That search is continuing.
My initial thought was that, and this I suppose was the initial thought of everybody in Milltown, that until Joyce's body was found, none of us could have predicted that something as serious as this would happen in the village of Milltown.
I still thought she was alive. I gave Ray a blanket and he just looked at me and I said, take that, she'd be frozen. I said, do you know what she's like? She'd be frozen. He said, oh, okay. And I look back now and I go, you idiot, you should have copped by the way he looked at you that he wasn't expecting her to be around. He wasn't expecting to find her alive. But I did.
The phone call came into Kildare station at 10:25 a.m. that two locals had been out on the search in an area near the local golf club when they came on the body of a female person. I was among a group of Gardaí to go to the scene, and the body was later identified as that of Joyce Quinn.
Bhí sé ina lír an féir, bhí a lábha os cionn a clogan, agus bhí a bheist agus a gansaí cangel sa lábha. Chimpel céad slap den bóthir tháinig muid péire lúteach dútha, péire bróga agus stóca amháin. Bhí péire brístí bána an sin freisin agus bhí siad strócaí.
Fior an nócht na bhrisise an lenaí agus thosnaíad ar gólag sé scréach. Chus isteach sa Christian chun rá le fuór Joyce ach nuair a chus isteach sa Christian bhí sé góilga ciún mar thula sé an scréach an seomar eile agus bhíosa ciún nach gíobh sé fuór arís. Léigh mé an máthir Joyce agus gáir na dhéag sin tháinig sé go dtíonteach agus tháinig sé isteach an doras an údar sin no Ray, not Joyce, not like this. It's two violent deaths in the family. What did I do?
He basically killed us all. And I'm not just talking about me and the kids. I'm talking about my aunties and uncles and poor grandma who, had gone through hell once and then had to go through it again.
The reaction in the village was shock, disbelief, and how could this happen on your own doorstep? At that point in time, I had been a reporter for about 5 or 6 years, and I never thought that I would be covering a murder in the village where I grew up, where I lived, and where I would know the victim, and where I would ultimately, as it turned out, know the perpetrator.
It was a scary time. It was quite unnerving. And then the fact that it came so close to home, that it was somebody that I knew, it was Joyce. It was just so frightening, and I certainly didn't feel safe around that time at all.
And when a brutal attack like this occurs to a female in the Gardaí, the onus is on us to protect the women of the countryside. We take it as sort of personal because we have family, we live in the community, we are part of the community. We have grandmothers, mothers, we have wives, we have daughters, we have sisters, and we like the rest of the community, we fear for their safety.
Former Curragh, Joyce Rash. And I can undertake the talkers, dear Sharon, you know, the ADR, done suckered. August, the suck has to go on the Lenny, we've gone on Garheim, Gomorla, Joyce, Gomershishin, Akavike. Honigan undertake a rash, then, yeah, to me, Guna Shinu sort. Of course, we did Lenny a cash on cash too, came for. August, he just got the Varna Gunti.
When she was in the funeral home, I got a bit of time with Mum on my own. I did her makeup, I curled her hair, I put on her perfume, and then when we were in the funeral home, people kept putting the sign of the cross on her forehead. And I remember thinking, oh, you're messing her hair. And it's a silly thing. I just wanted to keep going over it and fixing her because she was just so beautiful. And you know, just, I said I didn't want her going to heaven, but her hair messed up.
Tugg Joyce Quinn, Park Ale, and Nishin. I guess a lot of young, the Suckered.
When we were going into the church, Davy got quite upset, and there were loads of reporters there, and they were just on top of him. I remember just going, oh, just leave him alone, and ran to Davy and just said, come on, you know, we do it together. And I remember the funeral. I remember my poor auntie's been so upset, trying to say how good she was and how much she's going to be missed. Went into a room afterwards, and President Robinson came in and had a few words with us, which was really, really nice for her.
After got thrown. I was in Schlee, good in Temple. Deus the Macht, I've heard them. Car, agus bhí mo chumráda ón arm agus an na Gardaí agus córsan agus cárde ag Marshall taobh hirding. Cheappa gur fearsnachta bhí anta.
I remember when we were in the graveyard itself, I had a rose to throw down. And I just thought, if I hold on, then it won't happen. If I don't throw it, it's not at the end. We went back to the barracks afterwards, and I remember thinking, somebody killed her. Are they here? You know, because we didn't know who. And it was so surreal. I think it still is. There's days that you just go, didn't happen. Yeah.
Well, an rud a scuivan lum, Givre needs ag noch a sé. Marilyn Rinn dús agus ina dhé sin Joyce. Mar an nula go léir, We were all, caught up in the images of a woman coming home from a Christmas party and the search for her. And then, of course, in early January, the discovery of her body. And then so soon afterwards, the awful attack on Joyce, when people who are just living ordinary lives, who, through no fault of their own, because they're a victim of something terrible that happens to them, they find themselves at the centre of the news. Their grief, their pain, what happened to their loved one, the whole process of even an investigation and a court case. And that's the rhythm society goes through in its search for justice and trying to find out what went wrong. I could do any other story. Those are the ones that get to you.
An ada bhí muinterí chin fi bhéile, bhí dulchan cín a visrúchan mang Gardaí.
On a sort of a preliminary examination of the body, we could see that what appeared to be a stab wound above her right breast.
Bhí sí nocht, agus bhí marcan ar a manual freisin.
Because the car was found in Milltown, we concentrated our inquiries there from the start. And I came across 7 of them people related how they had seen a local man hanging around in the vicinity of the shop at the vital time of between 6 and 7 on the 23rd, the evening that Joyce disappeared. In 1996, there was more of a concentration on going out into an area and establishing the movements of people as quickly as possible in the hope that the people would have seen something at the time that would be helpful to us.
Ag an scrúdúir was fuairmuid síl, bhí sé solar ón méid síl a bhí an gur actra é sin a Harlan Jenny.
7 days after the murder of Joyce Quinn on the 30th of January 1996, I was with a party of Gardaí that went with the search warrant to the home of Kenneth O'Reilly. We went at 7 a.m. in the morning, and I was present when he was arrested, and he actually, I handcuffed him.
Faoin amseo bhí dóthain fianna se bailithe na Gardaí chun duine gháil, ach do bhaintear bhail an bhuilean, tháinig an tólas go raibh an taobhí faoi áras ina chonaí in a measc in ar a dóigheartha.
I was shocked that one of your own is the person who was arrested in relation or in connection with that crime. So the general reaction was one of shock, disappointment, sorrow and anger over this. Anger that one of your own could actually do this.
Kenneth O'Reilly was a 23-year-old local man. He lived at home with his parents and 2 brothers. He attended the local primary school in Milltown and went on to the vocational school in Newbridge, where he had his leaving certificate. He worked as a boner in Kildare meat factory from 1993 to 1995 for a total of 2.5 years. But at the time of the murder, he was unemployed. Locally, the people would say that he was a loner, but polite and quiet, but it was never known to use any violence towards anybody in the village or any male or female.
I had known Kenneth O'Reilly. I would remember him from primary school. I would have known then that Kenneth O'Reilly played and was quite a good player with the underage teams in Milltown at the end of the 1980s. There was a very successful period at underage level in Milltown, and I remember Kenneth O'Reilly was part of that setup. And then when the soccer club was set up in the early 1990s, I remember Kenneth O'Reilly playing soccer with the soccer club.
Bhí sin na chustaméir se a bhí ag Joyce agus bhí ar na leníar.
I would have chatted to him, and there were all the lads who'd play football, and they'd congregate on the Sunday morning, just on the wall beside the shop, and they come in and get the bits and pieces. So I would have known him from coming in and out of the shop, and would have chatted to him. I always thought he was very polite, nice lad. Mum would have thought he was a nice fellow too. There was nothing that said he would do something like that. It just didn't compute.
He spoke to us quite freely about his movements. First of all, on the night before, where he had a date with his girlfriend, and he stayed there for the night, returning to Milltown village at 5 o'clock on the evening of the 23rd to Joyce's shop. Joyce was alone. He didn't buy anything in the shop, but he asked her to change a £20 note. He left the shop again, and he then went on to describe how on the way home with the two £10 notes that one of them flew over the school wall.
Bhí an caretaker scoil chu sé ceiste an trán an son cad bhí a dhéanamh agus dúirt sé go gur chail sé airgad.
And the caretaker actually helped him for a short while to see could they find the money. We didn't believe that version of events, and obviously he took up his position again. He would have been stalking Joyce Quinn at that stage.
Personally, I think he was waiting for her. It was premeditated. Because just where I believe he thumbed the lift, it's only just down the road from the shop and that, you know.
Kenneth O'Reilly alleged that he was thumbing a lift here, across the road from the Hangman's pub, on that Tuesday evening. Joyce Quinn stopped and picked him up, and they drove the short distance past Father Moore's Well, up Rathbride Hill, across the Curragh Plains. Kenneth O'Reilly alleges that he told Joyce Quinn that he was going to visit a friend in Kildare. When they were coming to the end of the Curragh, Kenneth O'Reilly alleges that he said that his friend lived back down the little road to the right, so Joyce said she'd bring him down. When they turned down onto the Curragh, that's when the awful tragedy occurred.
He maintains that he demanded the money off her, that she was shocked, obviously, and she tried to talk him out of it, you know, not to be silly, and that, you know, that if he got out of the car now, she wouldn't tell anyone. He said that Joyce reached for something near the glove compartment of the car, and that he reached for it and grabbed it first, and he said that it was a knife. So now, that's the first time he admits to having a knife in his hand. He lost the plot, or lost the head, and he stabbed Joyce Quinn in the rib cage. He then went on to describe that he pulled her over from the driver's seat, got into the car, and drove the car a short distance in on the Curragh Plains.
Bhí siochan an siomany ag lí siar agus bhí full ar an siochan sin. Bhí full ar taobh an passenger ar nós gur harann si a maithí.
He pulled Joyce across the front of the car, and he sexually assaulted her and left her near some forest bushes and inflicted another wound to her neck. He then went on to describe how he jumped into the car and he drove I think it's 3 miles back to the village of Milltown.
It was behind this school building that Joyce Quinn's car was found that night, back in January of 1996, where you couldn't see it from this road approaching from Allen, or you couldn't see it from the other road approaching from Kildare or from the Curragh Plains. You could see that it was driven to that location at speed, because you could see where the impact of the front wheels hitting the curb to drive it up on the lawn, to hide it here behind the school. So there's no doubt in my mind that how it was hidden and where it was hidden shows that this was clearly premeditated.
After Kenneth O'Reilly came back to Milltown after committing the murder, he went home and he changed his clothes and had a shower. Then he rang his girlfriend, made arrangements to meet her.
Léise isteach a tach an caretaker, agus dúirt sé fóras an airgad sin, you know, ginger there. na bhíon bacha.
Later on that night, Kenneth O'Reilly came back here to the Hangman's pub and actually had some drinks in the Hangman's pub that night afterwards.
And that was, according to his version of events, picked up Joyce, committed this horrific crime, and was back home in 45 minutes. He acted as normal. Even at one stage he went down to have his hair done, and needless to say, the whole conversation in the hairdressers evolved around the murder, and he actually contributed to the conversation.
Fihimi Trish Kenneth O'Reilly a gháil, hána sé ó scór na príomhchúirte Curragh an 10 Láí Erafór 1997.
I was standing there in the middle of the hall waiting to go into the court.
Bhí an príomhhaim a bhí aige ná ag nó go hifigóil is dúnpart hála. Ach an áréire is cuirpach gnéis atá agus go raibh sé olah dúnmharú a dhéanamh chun an chuir gnéis ag cheilt. Tuisc nach raibh visaco an raibh Joyce marmh nó ag fáil bháis. Na chuir an chuir gnéis ina le an éair.
Ba chuir chinúnach é dún bharú Joyce Quinn, agus ar an 8 Láí a bhí feabhra 1996, spreag sé os ciún ráchiad ban le dullar na sráideanna ag agó a díoch do gine forréigen agus imagla a gine ban.
Well, an gifre sin bhí sé úfásach. Bhí imné a glór man. Ach in a year sin, and I remember that's why I was so keen to go on that Reclaim the Night March for Mourning Ireland and report on it, because I'd been as a student on Reclaim the Night Marches in my time. It wasn't just the usual feminists, if you like, who turned out, or the students on this one. It was women like Marilyn, like Joyce. It was women like my mother. It was women like my sisters and my aunts. You know, fi fatis an, ach fi faragan fresh. You know, there was this righteous anger that women genuinely felt. You know, what is this? That you can't go outside your front door without, you know, some random man might be violent against you and take your life. 209 women were murdered in the next 20 years. And we know that today there are still these dreadful cases of violence against women. The riddle of why some men, and it's only a small minority of men, feel such aggression towards women, either the women they know or randomly. Has anyone explained that riddle? Marnie Higamation. What has changed in those last 20 years? When I talked to my daughters, it was a much more male-dominated agenda. Women were expected to join a man's world much more then. I think the questioning of that agenda is different now. We can only put faith in our daughters.
There is, I suppose, a realisation that Kenneth O'Reilly will be freed at some point. I'm aware that Ray Quinn has undertaken a very public campaign to limit Kenneth O'Reilly's movements if and when Kenneth O'Reilly is released from prison. Nobody should have to undertake that, because the tragedy that was visited upon the Quinn family on that awful night in January 25 years ago, that's enough.
He's going to get out at some stage. Yeah, have to accept logic. But he doesn't want him in Kildare, and he's not going to have him bumping into any of us.
The bhar fatíosa tá buint leis an pobal sa áit má gcóir agus le maithaileach tá mé éireann má scaoiltear as an brazúna an fear seo ar parol, go go mad faoi as cúnta Kildare agus go gachar sé teag electronic a chab chun go mé cinnte go bhfuil sé fannach bas an gúnta. No a chuineam ar an iarbartíí domach lean agus an brodólacht agus an scéimhle a bhain le Boss Joyce. You know, mar mar lena Gramachrí agus í caite, you know, an ospís a brúscar ar an natain ar a bhí sé críochna le. Is fear dain séireach é. Tá fatíos rih an pobl I Kildare rih an fear seo.
Well, even still, even now, just passing by the shop is still Joyce's shop. I know it has been bought over and all of that, but to me it'll always be Joyce's shop, you know. So yeah, and I often think about her, you know, and I might cycle out to Milltown sometimes, maybe to go to the grave and that, and I would you know, pass by the shop.
Bhíomar mar deagóirí nó na bhúla mar le chéile, nó héit mar an rá, fósmar nó bhí mar an óg. Bhí saoil braagain le éis sláint, gur sláint a bhácha, rinne mar lán taiste le chéile, agus is dachar nó a lacha nach bhuiid si necid am inis. Tá Joyce ar iúrig as ar saoil an tán go léir. Bhí si an asnamh fós na lenaí, bhí si an asnamh nuair na cailíní ag gompar cluine, bhí si an asnamh, you know, ag breithne na gar cluine. Agus tá si an asnamh gach lá brethe na gná, rudaí ach trí a hálíonn in éon gná teach.
When I became a mum for the first time, it was magical and it was heartbreaking, because obviously when you're pregnant, you want to ask your mum, listen, what was it like, what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, you know, all the ins and outs that really you're only going to ask your mum. It was hard not having her there. It's hard for my siblings as well. I firmly believe Mum would have given up the shop when we had kids, because she would have wanted to be there. She loved babies, and you know, to be able to have us all together would just, she'd be in her element. I think because also what happened with Mum, there's a fear that something bad can happen, and you don't have the mother to come in and say it's all right, honey, and wave the flag and say everything will be sorted, it's okay. And you know, it's sad for the children, because she would have been a wonderful grandmother, absolutely amazing.
Trí dar coin sa bhaile, agus dás na ní crown, agus sé sin an crown as an Jarcán David.